The Lady Sadlier Case, the birth of modern divorce. The indissoluble vow, marriage in the 16th century. The year was 1546 in Tudor England. Marriage during this era was considered a sacred, unbreakable vow. Under the authority of the Church of England, the bond was believed to be sealed by God, and its dissolution by a civil court was deemed virtually impossible. Divorce, in the modern sense, did not exist. One could only seek an annulment, declaring the marriage was never valid, or a separation, allowing the couple to live apart. It was within this rigid legal framework that the tragic story of Lady Margaret Sadlier would challenge the entire system. 2. A misfortune and a new beginning. Lady Margaret suffered a great misfortune when her first husband, Mr. Barr, suddenly and completely disappeared without a trace. After years of silence, Margaret and those around her became absolutely certain he was deceased. Choosing to move forward with her life, Margaret married a second time, taking as her husband Sir Ralph Sadlier, an important statesman and a trusted figure under King Henry VIII. This union blessed them with 7 children, and their life proceeded in happiness and prosperity. However, their joy was shattered by a cruel twist of fate. Years later, her long-presumed dead first husband, Mr. Barr, unexpectedly returned. 3. The legal impasse and the Church's decree. Mr. Barr's return plunged Lady Margaret not only into a profound moral dilemma, but also into a seemingly insurmountable legal crisis. According to church law, if the first husband was alive, the second marriage was automatically considered invalid. Despite Margaret acting in good faith, the church refused to recognize her bond with Sir Ralph, demanding that she return to her legally rightful first husband. This situation also jeopardized the legitimacy of her 7 children. The conventional courts and the church were unable to resolve this complex and deeply challenging situation. The case swiftly ascended to the highest levels of English governance and law. 4. Parliament's Revolution, the Private Act. Lady Margaret Sadlier's singular case prompted the first substantial move by civil authority against religious authority in England. Acknowledging the situation from a humane and practical standpoint, the English Parliament decided to pass a private act of Parliament to resolve the deadlock. This special law, enacted in 1546, formally declared Lady Margaret Sadlier divorced from her first husband, Mr. Barr. Crucially, it simultaneously validated and legalized her second marriage to Sir Ralph Sadlier. This decision was not merely about saving one woman's life. It created a landmark precedent in English legal history. By overriding the Church's absolute authority, Parliament for the first time exerted the power of the sovereign state to legally terminate a marriage and grant the right to remarry through a civil enactment. The case of Lady Margaret Sadlier did not start the history of divorce, but it marked the first pivotal step in the journey toward modern divorce law, showing the power of the civil state to provide a human solution where the Church's rigid rules could not. The Takeoff, the world's first commercial air route. A new century, a new horizon. The year is 1914. The world stands on the brink of profound change, and transportation is no exception. While automobiles were still struggling on bumpy roads, and trains dominated long-distance travel, a revolutionary idea took flight in the skies over Florida. Routine, scheduled passenger service by air. This was the birth of the airline industry. 2. The St. Petersburg-Tampa airboat line. The concept was simple yet audacious. Across the sparkling waters of Tampa Bay, a journey by land required a tedious 36-mile detour. Why not simply fly across the water? This vision was brought to life by the St. Petersburg-Tampa airboat line, established on January 1, 1914. This was not merely a stunt or a special charter. It was the world's first scheduled airline connection, dedicated to transporting passengers on a regular timetable. The chosen aircraft for this pioneering service was a Benoist Type 14 flying boat. A flying boat was essential for the task, capable of taking off from and landing on water. These early planes were small, carrying just one pilot and a single passenger, seated side by side in the open cockpit. 3. The pilot and the price of progress. The first history-making flight was piloted by Tony Janus, a renowned exhibition flyer and test pilot. The route covered the 20-mile, approximately 32-kilometer, width of the bay. For the passengers, this service was a dramatic time saver. What took hours by car or train could now be completed in minutes. The price for this revolutionary convenience was $5 per ticket, a significant sum for the era, reflecting the novelty and risk involved. For a premium, passengers bypassed the long overland route, instantly justifying the expense through speed. 4. The legacy of 4 months. The service operated twice daily, maintaining its schedule for approximately 4 months. Though short-lived, closing when the winter tourist season ended, the St. Petersburg-Tampa airboat line achieved its mission. It demonstrated conclusively that air travel could be reliable, practical, and scheduled, a viable form of commercial transportation. This brief but pivotal operation proved the commercial viability of passenger flight. It shattered the perception of airplanes as mere toys or military weapons and established the template for the global industry we know today. Every transatlantic flight, every cargo route, and every ticket purchased owes its existence to that humble Benoist flying boat that first crossed Tampa Bay, launching humanity into the age of routine air travel. The first hijacking, the tragedy of the Miss Macau. A routine flight over the South China Sea. The date was June 16, 1948. The location was the vital, bustling air link between the Portuguese colony of Macau and the British colony of Hong Kong. Aviation at the time was often handled by robust seaplanes, and on this day, the aircraft was the Cathay Pacific Airways Catalina flying boat, nicknamed the Miss Macau. The plane was preparing for a routine trip across the Pearl River estuary. On board was a diverse group of passengers and crew, but hidden among the travelers was a group of Chinese criminals, led by a former land worker named Wang Yuman. They had no political agenda. Their motive was pure avarice. They intended to hijack the aircraft and hold the wealthy passengers for ransom. 2. The sky turns into a crime scene. Moments after the Miss Macau lifted off the water, the terrifying plot was launched. Wang Yuman's group produced firearms and attempted to take control of the cockpit. The intent was to force the pilot to land the flying boat in a secluded location where they could easily secure their hostages. However, the crew and the pilot refused to surrender the aircraft. A desperate struggle erupted in the confined space of the cockpit. Shots were fired. In the chaos and violence, the pilot lost control of the seaplane. The Miss Macau, the first commercial airliner to ever be hijacked, plunged into the waters of the South China Sea. 3. The sole survivor and the silent evidence. The crash was catastrophic. Of all the passengers and crew members aboard, only one person survived the wreck, the ringleader of the pirates, Wang Yuman. The immediate aftermath was confusion. Rescue efforts focused on the wreckage, and initially, no one suspected the lone survivor of being the orchestrator of the disaster. However, police soon located the wreckage and found a crucial, silent witness. Bullet holes riddling the fuselage. These were not caused by the crash. They were the proof of a violent struggle and an intentional crime. The investigation quickly shifted from accident to murder. 4. The bedside confession. The Hong Kong police, realizing they were dealing with an unprecedented act of piracy, focused on the sole survivor, Wang Yuman, who was recuperating from his injuries in a hospital. Without sufficient evidence to directly link him to the hijacking, the police devised a clever strategy worthy of a spy novel. They placed a trusted undercover officer in the hospital bed right next to Wang Yuman. The plan worked perfectly. Over time, the isolated and likely guilt-ridden Wang Yuman began to talk to his friendly, attentive neighbor. His tongue loosened, and he confessed. The entire sequence of events, the plot to hold the passengers hostage, the pilot's resistance, the ensuing gunfight, and the fatal crash. The secret policeman, meanwhile, meticulously recorded every detail of the unprecedented crime. Wang Yuman was subsequently arrested, and his confession led to the full documentation of the first ever hijacking in aviation history, a tragic event that established a chilling new dimension of air travel security that haunts the industry to this day. The first stitch, the day surgery dared to touch the heart. The forbidden frontier. For centuries, the heart was considered the sacred, untouchable center of life, the seat of the soul. Doctors viewed it with awe, but also with dread. Standard medical doctrine throughout the 19th century held that any direct surgical intervention on the human heart was fatally forbidden. Surgeons who dared to suggest such an act were often met with derision. The great Theodore Billroth famously stated that any surgeon who attempted to stitch the heart would forfeit the respect of his colleagues. To suffer a penetrating heart wound was, in essence, a death sentence. 2. Frankfurt, 1896. A life hangs in the balance. The grim prognosis for heart wounds was about to be challenged. The date was September 9, 1896, at the City Hospital in Frankfurt, Germany. The patient was William Justice, a 22-year-old gardener's apprentice, brought in after a saloon brawl. An unknown assailant had stabbed him in the chest, leaving a catastrophic injury. The victim was rapidly bleeding out. His condition was desperate. Taking charge of the case was the determined surgeon, Dr. Ludwig Wren. Just 2 years prior, surgeons in London and Chicago had attempted similar repairs with mixed or fatal results. Yet Wren knew conventional wisdom would guarantee this young man's death. He had to act. 3. The breakthrough operation. Daring to cross the surgical threshold, Dr. Wren proceeded with an emergency thoracotomy. Upon reaching the heart, the surgeon was confronted by a 1.5 centimeter long wound in the right ventricle, the chamber responsible for pumping blood to the lungs. Blood was surging from the laceration with terrifying speed. Working with unprecedented precision under extreme pressure, Dr. Wren carefully closed the wound using silk sutures, a groundbreaking feat of fine motor skill. He then cleaned the accumulated blood, hemorrhage, from the space around the heart, pericardium, and the lungs, pleura. The entire procedure was an act of surgical courage previously unseen. 4. The triumph and the turning point. The outcome was nothing short of miraculous. William Justice not only survived the operation but made a swift and complete recovery. Dr. Wren's success immediately shattered the old surgical dogma. In a field where the mortality rate for penetrating heart wounds had been nearly 100%, Wren's intervention offered hope. Over the next decade of his career, Dr. Wren performed 124 recorded heart operations, achieving an astonishing survival rate of 40%. The successful closure of William Justice's wounded heart was more than just a medical victory. It was a profound shift in surgical philosophy. Dr. Louis Wren's courage that day in Frankfurt proved that the heart was not inviolable. His pioneering suture opened the door for all future cardiac surgery, laying the groundwork for everything from open-heart procedures to modern transplants, forever changing the course of medicine. From secret reactor to power grid, the full story of Obninsk. The shadow of the bomb. The mid-20th century was defined by a single, terrifying truth: the atom could destroy the world. Yet, in the shadow of the atomic bomb, a select group of Soviet scientists envisioned a different future, one where the atom could power civilization. The year was 1954, and the two global superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, were locked in a technological race to be the first to harness nuclear power for peaceful civilian use. This competition was not just scientific. It was a fundamental ideological contest over which system could better deliver progress to humanity. 2. The birth of the AM-1 reactor. The Soviet effort was spearheaded by the legendary physicist Igor Kurchatov. The chosen location was a classified research center near the town of Obninsk, roughly 55 miles, 88 kilometers, southwest of Moscow, which was already a hub for nuclear weapons research. The project's goal was ambitious: to build a controlled, continuous, and reliable power source. 3. June 27, 1954, the global milestone. After years of intense, secretive work, the critical moment arrived. On June 27, 1954, the Obninsk nuclear power plant, APS-1, achieved a world first. While the U.S. had experimented with smaller, purely military prototypes, Obninsk was the first nuclear facility to produce electricity and reliably send it into a civilian power grid. The initial capacity of the plant was 5,000 kilowatts, 5 megawatts. This figure seems minuscule today, but in the context of 1954, it was revolutionary. It proved, beyond a doubt, that the boundless energy promised by the atom was a tangible reality. The power generated was quickly routed to the local industrial and agricultural operations, providing a visible, practical success story for Soviet propaganda machines. 4. Prestige and practicality. The Soviet Union immediately leveraged the Obninsk success for maximum global impact. It was a potent propaganda victory, framing the USSR as the protector of scientific progress and peaceful application of technology, contrasting it with the US's focus on nuclear weaponry. This strategic reveal fundamentally shifted the Cold War narrative, forcing the West to redouble its own efforts in civil nuclear power. But the ordnance plant's function extended beyond political showmanship. Over its operational lifetime, it provided invaluable data. Scientists and engineers studied everything from neutron flux and radiation shielding to the long-term integrity of the reactor components. It served as the crucial prototype and training ground for the next generation of Soviet reactors, including the powerful RBMK design, the type later used at Chernobyl. Obninsk's pioneering role was the foundation upon which the Soviet nuclear fleet, and much of the global nuclear industry, was built. From ancient glue to modern roads, the history of asphalt. The ancient origins of a sticky substance. Asphalt, a substance largely derived from petroleum today, but also naturally occurring in deposits like the La Brea tar pits or the Pitch Lake in Trinidad, boasts a surprisingly ancient history. Its initial recorded use dates back as far as 2500 BC. This sticky, black material was not first used for roads, but as a vital building component. In the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro, located in modern-day Pakistan, asphalt was used as a sealant and adhesive between the bricks of the city's sophisticated public baths. The engineers of the Indus Valley Civilization recognized its crucial waterproof properties, harnessing it to preserve their structures. Contemporaneously in Mesopotamia, asphalt served a similarly important purpose. It is known that asphalt was employed to bind together the heavy paving stones used for the sacred walkways and courtyards dedicated to the gods. Whether in Pakistan or the Fertile Crescent, this natural bitumen was prized as a durable, waterproofing cement. 2. The industrial evolution. For millennia, asphalt remained a localized sealant, binder, and preservative. Its use as a major paving material, however, had to await the industrial age. The precursor to modern road paving, a mixture known as tar macadam, was first used in Nottinghamshire, England, in 1845. This method involved mixing tar, a byproduct of coal and wood, with crushed stone, macadam, creating a durable and water-resistant surface superior to plain gravel roads. This innovation significantly improved mobility during the era of horse-drawn carriages and early bicycles. 3. The automotive catalyst. Despite these early experiments, asphalt did not achieve global importance as a road surfacing material until the 1920s. The explosion of the automotive industry was the true catalyst. As the number of cars and trucks grew exponentially worldwide, the need for smooth, dust-free, and high load-bearing road surfaces became paramount. The traditional macadam roads could not withstand the stresses and speeds of motorized traffic. It was during this period that petroleum-derived asphalt, applied as a flexible pavement, gained global recognition. Its resilience, durability, and cost-effectiveness ensured that it became the essential component for highway construction across the planet, transforming the way we travel and connecting the world in ways the ancient builders of Mohenjo-Daro could never have imagined. The silent witness, the birth of fingerprint forensics. The discovery in Tokyo. The true originator of fingerprint identification as a tool for criminal justice was an unsung hero, Henry Faulds, a Scottish physicist and surgeon. While working at the Tsukiji Hospital in Tokyo, Faulds recognized a profound truth hidden in the swirls and loops on human fingertips. On October 2, 1880, Faulds published a foundational letter in the prestigious journal Nature, outlining his radical theory. If a print is taken on wax, glass, paper, or anything, it would largely aid in finding the criminals. To prove his point, Faulds detailed two crucial experiments. In one instance, the greasy marks left on a bottle revealed who had consumed a forbidden substance. In the second, fingerprints left by a man attempting to climb a whitewashed wall quickly led to his identification. Faulds had provided the world with the key to objective identification, demonstrating that these unique dermal ridges were an unalterable signature of identity. 2. The dismissal and the Argentinian adoption. Tragically, Faulds' groundbreaking suggestion was largely dismissed by his own country's authorities. The Scottish police failed to take his proposal seriously. The revolutionary idea had to travel halfway around the globe to find its first enthusiastic champion. That champion was one Vucetic, a Croatian-born police official working for the Buenos Aires Provincial Police at La Plata. Vucetic had been tasked with developing a system for classifying criminal characteristics. Recognizing the potential of the fingerprint method, Vucetic incorporated it into his system. On March 31, 1892, he established the world's very first fingerprint bureau, transforming Fauld's theory into a functional police tool. 3. The crime scene, the Rojas case. Just months later, Vucetic's pioneering bureau faced its first true test. In July 1892, the police of La Plata were called to a gruesome scene. A woman named Francisca Rojas emerged from her blood-soaked shack, screaming that she had been brutally attacked and her 2 children murdered. Rojas immediately accused her neighbor, Velázquez, who had long wished to marry her. The young man was quickly arrested and subjected to interrogation. But local gossip soon reached the police. Rumors suggested Rojas was involved with another man who refused to marry her because of her children. Suspicion shifted, and an investigation into the victim's mother began. 4. The silent accusation. On July 8, 1892, Inspector Eduardo Alvarez arrived from La Plata to take charge of the case. During his investigation, he noticed blood-stained fingerprints clearly visible on the doorframe of Rojas's cottage. Alvarez, acting decisively, cut out the section of the wood containing the prints and sent it back to the newly established bureau in La Plata for analysis, along with the prints of the accused neighbor, Velázquez. The results were electrifying. The bloody prints on the doorframe did not match the neighbor. They belonged to Francisca Rojas herself. Confronted with this undeniable, silent evidence, Rojas broke down and confessed. She had murdered her own children because the man she desired refused to marry a mother. The Rojas case became the first homicide investigation in the world to be solved exclusively using fingerprint evidence. Although Rojas was sentenced to life imprisonment, as women were not subject to the death penalty in Argentina at the time, the legacy of the case was global. It proved that the unique pattern on a fingertip was the ultimate, infallible witness. The age of modern forensic science had truly begun.